The Astralis Station loomed above Korval Prime, its exterior battered but intact. Captain Elara Draymond stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the massive rift spiraling in the sky. The serpentine entity continued to emerge, its shifting form distorting the space around it. The shards scattered across the planet pulsed in unison, feeding energy into the lattice. "Status report," Elara ordered. Lieutenant Harris, seated at the tactical console, shook his head grimly. "The rift is stabilizing faster than we anticipated. We've lost 2 drones trying to approach. The thing reacts to anything that gets close." "Casualty reports from the surface?" Elara asked. "Minimal so far, but the energy emissions from the shards are increasing," Harris replied. "If they keep intensifying, it's going to affect more than just Korval Prime." Taven, the station's chief scientist, entered the bridge, a tablet clutched in his hands. "Captain, I've been running simulations. Destroying the shards isn't enough, they're acting like amplifiers, but the lattice itself is autonomous now. It's a self-sustaining loop." Elara turned sharply to face him. "Then how do we stop it?" Taven hesitated, his usual confidence replaced by unease. "The only way to destabilize the rift is to disrupt the lattice at its source. We have to go through it." The bridge fell silent. Harris broke the tension. "Go through the rift? Are you saying we should dive into that thing?" Taven nodded. "Yes, it's risky, but it's our best shot. If we can sever the connection between the rift and the shards, we might collapse the lattice entirely." Elara's jaw tightened. "What kind of risk are we talking about?" "The rift is unstable," Taven said. "The moment we enter, we'll be exposed to dimensional distortions. There's no guarantee we'll even survive the trip, let alone succeed." Elara's eyes didn't waver. "Then we prepare for the worst. Harris, ready the Indomitable for deployment. Taven, I want every detail about what's on the other side." Taven hesitated. "Captain, we don't know what's on the other side. It could be another universe, it could be nothing." "Then we'll find out," Elara said. Her voice carried a weight that silenced further objections. "And we'll make sure this thing doesn't destroy ours." The crew of the Indomitable worked tirelessly to prepare the ship. Engineers reinforced the hull with experimental shielding designed to withstand extreme energy fluctuations. Scientists calibrated sensors to function in unpredictable conditions. Every crew member understood the stakes. In the ship's ready room, Elara addressed her team. "This mission isn't just about saving Korval Prime. If this rift stabilizes, it could spread beyond the system. We're the first line of defense and possibly the last." Harris leaned forward, his expression resolute. "What's our plan once we're inside?" Taven brought up a holographic display of the lattice. "The lattice's core should be near the center of the rift. If we can disrupt the energy flow there, it should cause the entire structure to collapse." "And what about that thing?" Harris asked, pointing to the image of the serpentine entity. Taven sighed. "It's linked to the lattice, but its nature is unpredictable. We'll need to adapt." Elara nodded. "Then we'll do what humans do best, improvise." As the Indomitable launched from the station, the crew braced themselves. The rift loomed larger with every passing moment, its swirling vortex pulling in fragments of light and matter. "Approaching the event horizon," Harris reported, his hands steady on the controls, shields holding. "Activate the energy dampeners," Elara ordered. The ship shuddered as it crossed the threshold. The view screen filled with chaotic bursts of light and shadow, the dimensions warping around them. The crew held their breath as they plunged deeper into the rift. "Dimensional integrity is fluctuating," Taven said, his voice tight. "We're in uncharted territory." Elara gripped the armrest of her chair. "Steady. Keep us on course." Through the chaos, a faint light appeared in the distance. It pulsed in time with the lattice growing brighter as they approached. "There!" Taven exclaimed. "That's the core!" But before they could adjust their course, the serpentine entity shifted. Its massive form coiled through the rift, blocking their path. Its presence was overwhelming, its shimmering body radiating a primal force. "It's protecting the core," Harris said, his voice tinged with awe. Elara's gaze hardened. "Then we'll have to go through it. The Indomitable halted just shy of the shimmering entity, its colossal body undulating with an almost hypnotic rhythm. Its presence was overwhelming, radiating power that defied explanation. The view screen dimmed automatically to shield the crew's eyes from its brilliance. "Analysis, Taven," Elara ordered, her voice steady despite the tension. Taven stared at his console, his expression a mix of fascination and dread. "It's not just protecting the core, it's part of it. Every energy pulse we've detected from the lattice is synchronized with its movements." Harris tightened his grip on the controls. "Great, so we have to take down a creature the size of a moon before we can even get close." "It's not just size," Taven said. "This thing exists on multiple planes at once. Conventional weapons might not even register as a threat to it." "Then we think unconventionally," Elara said. She turned to the crew. "Options?" Lieutenant Wren, the ship's communications officer, hesitated before speaking. "What if we don't attack? If it's part of the core, it might respond to something other than aggression. We've encountered sentient constructs before." Elara considered this. "Taven, can we communicate with it?" Taven frowned, fingers flying over his console. "Maybe. It's emitting energy patterns that could be interpreted as a rudimentary language, but translating them is another matter." "Do it," Elara said. "If this thing can understand us, we need to try." The bridge fell silent as Taven worked, the hum of the ship's systems the only sound. The entity continued to coil and shift, its movements mesmerizing yet menacing. Finally, Taven straightened, his eyes wide. "I've got something," he said. "It's responding to our presence. It's aware of us." "Put it through," Elara said. The view screen flickered, and the entity's form shifted. Its massive head turned toward the ship, and a low, resonant hum filled the air. The sound wasn't just audible. It vibrated in their chests, a feeling more than a noise. Taven adjusted the console, and the hum resolved into words. "Intruders, state your purpose." Elara stepped forward. "We seek to end the lattice's expansion. It's threatening our universe." The entity's eyes glowed, their light piercing. "The lattice is order. The lattice is balance. Why do you disrupt?" Elara hesitated. This wasn't what she expected. "The lattice is consuming everything in its path. It's not balance, it's destruction. Perception is flawed. Your chaos threatens the lattice." "Chaos," Harris muttered. "We're not the ones ripping apart reality." Elara shot him a look before addressing the entity again. "We can't allow the lattice to continue. It's destabilizing our existence. Please, let us through." The entity's body shifted, its coils tightening. "You speak of preservation, yet you bring weapons. Your intent is conflict." Elara clenched her jaw. "If we wanted conflict, we wouldn't be talking." The entity's hum deepened, vibrating the entire ship. "Words are empty, show your intent." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. "What does it mean, show your intent?" Harris asked. Taven's face was pale. "I think it's testing us. It wants us to prove we're not a threat." "How do we do that?" Wren asked. Elara's mind raced. "Lower shields, power down weapons." Harris whipped around. "Captain, that's suicide." "It's trust," Elara said. "This thing doesn't want to be attacked, and it doesn't trust us. If we want to get through, we have to meet it halfway." Harris looked unconvinced, but he followed her orders. Shields lowering, weapons offline. As the ship's defenses powered down, the entity stilled. Its glowing eyes dimmed slightly and the hum softened. "Your chaos holds potential. Proceed to the core, but know this: balance demands sacrifice." Before they could respond, the entity unfurled its massive body, creating a path through the swirling rift. The pulsing light of the core lay ahead, brilliant and blinding. Elara's voice cut through the tension. "Taven, what did it mean? Balance demands sacrifice." "I don't know," he admitted, "but I doubt it's good." "Then we'll deal with it when we get there," Elara said. "Harris, take us in." The Indomitable surged forward, the rift's chaotic energy growing stronger with every kilometer. Behind them, the entity watched silently, a sentinel of a truth they were only beginning to uncover. The Indomitable navigated the chaotic energies of the rift, the path ahead illuminated by the pulsating light of the lattice core. Even with the protective shielding of the entity behind them, the ship groaned under the strain of the rift's gravitational anomalies. "Elara, we're pushing the limits here," Harris said, his voice strained as he wrestled with the controls. "This place doesn't want us in it." "Keep us steady," Elara replied, her focus unwavering. "Taven, how close are we to the core?" Taven's hands danced over his console. "Approximately 2,000 kilometers. The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever this thing is, it's rewriting physics as we know it." "We've come this far," Elara said. "We're not turning back now." The ship jolted violently, throwing the crew against their restraints. Sparks flew from several consoles, and alarms blared across the bridge. Ren shouted over the chaos, "We're losing structural integrity on the lower decks." Harris cursed under his breath. "This thing is shredding us. We need to stabilize." "Divert all auxiliary power to the shields," Elara ordered. "And Harris, get us as close as you can." The Indomitable surged forward, its engines straining against the rift's hostile forces. The lattice core grew larger with each passing moment, its light casting eerie shadows across the bridge. It was a mesmerizing sight, beautiful and terrible in its intensity. "Captain," Taven's voice cut through the tension. "We've got something on sensors." "What now?" Elara asked, her tone sharp. "It's not the entity we left behind," Taven said, his voice tinged with dread. "There's something else, multiple somethings, and they're moving fast." The view screen flickered and a swarm of smaller constructs emerged from the core's light. They were sleek and angular, with glowing trails of energy that left streaks of color in their wake. Their movements were erratic but purposeful, converging on the Indomitable like a storm of predatory birds. "They don't look friendly," Harris muttered, gripping the controls tighter. "They're lattice constructs," Taven confirmed. "Defense mechanisms. The core is protecting itself." "Shields up, weapons online," Elara barked. "Ren, get me firing solutions. Harris, evasive maneuvers. Don't let them box us in." The bridge became a flurry of activity as the constructs closed in. Energy bolts lanced out from the ship's turrets, striking the attackers with pinpoint accuracy. Some disintegrated instantly, but others adapted, shifting their forms to evade the fire. "They're learning," Ren said, her voice tight. "They're analyzing our tactics." "Then we outthink them," Elara said. "Keep changing patterns. Don't let them predict us." The Indomitable weaved through the swarm, its weapons blazing. The constructs retaliated with bursts of energy that rocked the ship, each impact chipping away at its defenses. Despite the chaos, the crew fought with determination, refusing to back down. "We're through the swarm!" Harris shouted as the last construct disintegrated under the ship's fire. "But the core is dead ahead and it's doing something." The lattice core pulsated violently, its light intensifying. The energy around it coalesced into a massive vortex, pulling the Indomitable closer. The ship's engines roared in protest as Harris fought to maintain control. "It's drawing us in," Ren yelled. "I can't override the trajectory." Elara's mind raced. "Taven, what are we dealing with?" "The core is reacting to our presence," Taven said, his voice shaking. "It's either trying to destroy us, or it's inviting us." "Inviting us," Harris snapped. "That's one hell of an invitation." Elara's jaw tightened. "We came here to stop this thing, and we're not leaving until we do. Harris, take us in." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but they obeyed. The Indomitable plunged into the vortex, the ship's system straining against the unimaginable forces. The light from the core enveloped them, blinding and all-consuming. And then, as suddenly as it began, the chaos stopped. The ship hung in silence, suspended within a vast, empty void. The lattice core loomed before them, a titanic structure of impossible geometry and infinite light. "It's beautiful," Ren whispered. "It's alive," Taven corrected, his voice barely audible. Elara stared at the core, her heart pounding. "This is it. Whatever the sacrifice is, we're about to find out."